All right, so what I'm going to be doing here, you can see I have the H440 behind me. I'm going to be installing my components into the H440, and as well, I've got these guys. You can kind of see this guy. I'm going to be doing water cooling. This is going to be my very first water cooling build. And because I'm going to be making mistakes, there's no ifs I'm going to make a mistake. I will make a mistake. Because I'm going to be making mistakes, and because somebody may stumble upon this and it may help them, I decided to record it all. I was just going to kind of buzz through it and do it on my own, but I decided that I want you guys to see what goes on in that process. So I spent well over $800 and all sorts of water cooling kits, from compression fittings to the reservoir and the pump. I got Primo Chill. I got my radiator over here. Going to be using Vardar fans. Don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can see a little better there. There. All right. I kind of have to fool the camera. So we got that. I've got my EK Supremacy Evo water block. Don't know if you can see that too well. Maybe if I got my hands out of the way. There we go. So it's nickel alcatel acetal, maybe. So I've got my CPU. I've got a 290X. So of course, there we go. The 290X and the back plate. We're going to do some water cooling. At the recommendation of Jay's 2 Cents, he has this Cobalt pipe cutter. I don't know how many more water cooling builds I'll build after this one. I may go to the PETG, I think it is, the hard tubing, depending on what I do. I'll spend a few minutes here to talk about why I chose the soft tubing. Generally, it's recommended for somebody new to water cooling to go soft tubing. And the reason for that is that like PETG, acrylic, those types of tubings, the hard tubings that they use, they're a skills based setup. They require more skills than just understanding where the parts go and connecting them together. You get this little black tube that goes on the inside, and then you have to use heat to heat it up, and then you have to mix it, or bend it rather. And there are ways you can get a pretty exact 90-degree bend or whatever bend you're trying to get without being really an expert at eyeing things. But it's really a skill. And with skill, the more practice you put into it, the better you're going to get at it. But for my particular loop, I really didn't want to have to throw that into the mix where I'm trying to figure out exactly how these things go together, trying to make sure that everything flows correctly, and trying to learn a new skill. That was just going to be too much. So if I get comfortable understanding how this goes together and confident in my abilities to make this work, then we can look at some of the harder tubing. Because if you ever have seen water cooling builds, some of the harder tubing, it's actually better. Now, originally I was going to do clear tubing with white fluid. As you can see, I've got clear EC6 from SPC, but it's got UV dyes into it, so it's not 100% clear. It's more of a almost like a cat piss yellow, which is fine. It's it's not going to harm anything. But what changed my mind was when I bought my reservoir. You could see it's the sort of the spiral helix kind of a thing. One side is black, one side of it's white. I assumed incorrectly that when the fluid was introduced, it would be in those spirals that the fluid would go. No, this fluid goes outside around there. And so if I used white fluid, you wouldn't see the black and white helix on the inside. So that really made the choice for me. I really didn't want to change the reservoir that I was using. I really liked this reservoir. So that really made that decision for me. So, let's see what we've got here. I was in the process of assembling this, or getting it out of the box, and when I was doing that, I grabbed the top lip and it kind of popped off, and so then now you can kind of see the top here, and I was like, oh great, I can put the radiator, because I've got the radiator here. I can put the radiator up there. And kind of, get that out of the way. But my initial, very first instinct was to not do any sort of water cooling parts until I get like the motherboard and the processor into the case. You get all that stuff in there, then you can look at where things go, where you think you're going to put things, and that sort of stuff. Because if you try to put the water cooling stuff in there first, like the radiator, and run some of the tubing and that sort of stuff, the reservoir, and then you start to put the motherboard in there, you may find that your choices have caused you some problems. So I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do was make sure that I got the motherboard in there, got it all secured, screwed down, all of that. Then I can look at, okay, where do I have space? Where can I put things? So that's what I'm going to do first. Is I'm going to get ready to put the motherboard in. If you bear with me for 1 second, I've got a text. All right, sorry about that. So I'm going to cut that out in post-processing. So I don't know if you've seen any videos of the H440. One of the awesome things about it is it's got these screws, like most cases do, on the side here. And it's toolless, mostly. And the screws stay onto the side panel. Now this is our favorite part. Is Isn't that awesome? And the inside too. How am I going to get the inside piece? Look at that. That is awesome. Alright, we're going to set that off to the side there. I am going to crack open the window because it doesn't take much for me to start sweating, and when I do, it's a never-ending process where I keep sweating. So, now that we got that, you can see they've kindly installed the standoffs for me already. So that's where those will go. And they've got two sleds here for the SSDs. Then of course 5 sleds in the back for actual hard drives. So I'm wondering how I'm going to fit that reservoir in there. Guess we'll figure it out. So let's get started here. I'm going to flip this guy around and pull off this back panel because it the other thing you'll notice, or may or may not notice, is that the back panel at least, has this foam. Really nice foam. So that's going to help with the H and keeping it quiet. But in the back here, I guess I'm going to have to pull the whole sled out. There it is. Always have the proper tool for the proper job. And I don't. So So this is what I wanted, was this little tray of parts here. They've attached it to a drive tray, which was nice. The drive trays actually have that dampening material on it too, which is super nice. I'm sure that you've heard the complaints about the drive system, because it's basically there's no track that runs all the way across. There's a little bit at the front, and then there's a little bit at the very back. So it's almost like the drive trays are free floating. So now, don't get me wrong. It seems like once you've got that screwed in there, it's stable. I wouldn't worry about my drives being in here, obviously, because this is the case I'm going to be building with. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. Sorry, it's kind of. Well, let's see what comes in the box, huh? So it looks like they've given you some extra dampeners. Not exactly sure what those go to. Very nice. They've given you a series of zip ties, or a set rather. Screws. This is neat. It's a little booklet. It says how to build a PC. But it's just referencing a website, buildapc.nzxt.com. There's no instructions inside the booklet on how to actually build a PC. Now, I don't need that. I've built plenty of PCs in my time. But for a beginner who's never built a computer, having a little booklet that goes, this is the steps that you take would be fantastic. But I can't complain. Having a website, most of us are going to have a second computer or a tablet or something where we can pull that up on and kind of follow it that way. So kudos to NZXT for that. Looks like some sort of a tool. And another motherboard standoff. (6-32) screws flat. (6-32) screws hexagon. And KB 5x 5x10 screw. So there's 4 of these. Not exactly sure what those are used for. And then there's a case badge. See if I can get that to show up a little better. Yeah. So that's what's in the box. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we've got both sides of the case open. We're going to flip it around and lay it on its side. There we go. And so that gives me access to where the motherboard's going to be going. There's a small dust tray on the bottom here. So now what we're going to do is start disconnecting things, kind of getting them out of the way so that, what's this? Well, that's the information for the Primo Chill. So my computer, or my tubing, came with SysPrep. Let's see if I can get that in focus. SysPrep from Primo Chill. And so this entire bottle goes into a 1 gallon thing of distilled water. Now, you're not going to use that to cool your computer. You use it to flush your components. So once you've gotten everything installed, you put the distilled water with the treatment in it in your loop, and you let it run for like half an hour. There's particulate that gets in your components as part of the manufacturing process. And so what it does is it actually breaks that stuff up and makes sure that there's none of that in there, because even the most minute particulates can cause your cooling system to break down. And that's certain death for a water-cooled system. If one component stops getting, if one component stops the flow of liquid, then it will subsequently stop the flow of liquid to everything behind that component. And then it just breaks your water cooling system down, and you're basically running hot. So it's very important, even if you're buying your stuff brand new. I bought everything I've got was brand new. I either bought it from Performance PCS or Performance PCs, or I bought it from EKWeb. EKWB. So everything is brand new, but even still, run the treated water through your system to break up that stuff. So there we go. Great. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you with me, kind of point it down a little bit. Going to clear this stuff up. Can you see that? I don't think you can. So I'm going to clear some of this stuff up, so I can put my old case, my old tower up here, so that I can transfer right next to each other. Here is, and you can see I've already attached the white fittings to it. So that's my radiator. For those of you wondering what it is, It is the EK Coolstream PE 240. So I got the 240 originally. I may jump up to the 360. The other thing I may do is go to SPC. They have these really nice radiators where the outside is painted white and the inside is black. It's fantastic. So I'm probably going to get one of those to replace that unit at some point. What in the heck is this stuff? That's something. I'm not sure what it is. So we're just going to take a look real quick. Oh, it's for my, I bought a new window blind, and it's a piece that'll allow you to wrap around that cord so it's not just dangling. It's just two plastic hooks that you can wrap the cord around. That's actually pretty cool. Don't know that I'll use it, but I'm definitely going to save it. One other thing that Jay's 2 cents and I have in common, I think, is that we both like saving things, even if we're not entirely sure that we're going to use it in the future. It's like, I'm still going to save it. Just bear with me. I'm probably going to cut all this stuff out, so don't worry about it. Alright. Now, where can I suppose right there is good enough. So this is a 290. I got this for 150 bucks. The reason I got it for 150 bucks is, if you can see that, the person who owned it before me cut that away because it didn't fit in their case where that PCI Express slot is. It kept bumping into it, so they just used a Dremel and cut that out. And I was like, well, it's really not affecting the performance of the card. So, and now I'm actually doing water cooling, so it's actually not a big deal at all. I've got to figure out how to get this shroud off. I'm guessing it's just these screws out here. But I'll cut to that when the time comes. So I'm going to set this off to the side here. Alright, what's next? Alright, let's disconnect the 24 pin. You're going to disconnect this giant 24-pin connector. You guys just latched on there, isn't it? Oh. Whew, doggy. All right. For my build, I went with two different types of RAM. Well, it's the same type, just different heat shrouds. So this is the HyperX